Welcome to Designing a Client-Centered Experience. My name is Nefra McDonald. I'm the Senior Manager of Strategic Engagement at Clio. I will be one of the facilitators floating the room this morning. We have Jocelyn and Nicole in the back. They're here to help you. If you need anything, just let us know. And I'm going to introduce our workshop leads today. So first up is Matt Homan. He's going to be leading us through the workshop portion. Matt's a creative entrepreneur and a recovery lawyer, has been active in the legal innovation community for more than 2 decades. He has facilitated unique legal events worldwide, so big reason why he's here with us today. He is a legal blogging pioneer, writing the first legal blog focused on innovation, creativity, client service, and alternative fees called The Non-Billable Hour. He's an ABA Journal Legal Rebel, a Fast Case 50 awardee, inducted into the College of Law Practice Management, and has delivered CLEs in over 25 states and 3 countries. So we're very excited to have Matt with us today. So give him a little round of applause. Let's get some energy going. Awesome. And coming up to give us the primer on the client-centered law firm is Jack Newton. Jack is the CEO and founder of Clio and a pioneer of cloud-based legal technology. Jack has spearheaded efforts to educate the legal community on the security, ethics, and privacy issues surrounding cloud computing, and is a nationally recognized writer and speaker on the state of the legal industry. Jack is the author of The Client-Centered Law Firm, the essential book for law firms looking to succeed in an experience-driven age, which is available at the bookstore, but you are the lucky recipients of this fantastic workbook that we're going to take you through today. Here comes Jack Newton to give us the lowdown.
Thanks, Nefra. Hey everyone, it's great to be here. Really excited to do this workshop with you. This is the first time we've done this workshop together with Matt, which is amazing. Matt helped us design this workbook a couple of years ago, and it's unfortunate because we basically put the finishing touches on the workbook where we had these grand visions for getting together in person with people that loved the ideas of the client-centered law firm and to get in a room and brainstorm and work through a workshop process. And about a month after we finished that workbook, COVID hit. So 2.5 years later, it is incredible to be in a room with all of you actually having the opportunity to work through this workbook. And it's a real honor to do this with Matt, who I have known as long as I've been in legal technology. I met Matt at the very first ABA Tech Show we attended back in 2008. And I remember Matt inspiring me at that point in just the way he talked to lawyers and challenged them to innovate and challenged them to reject the status quo. So really excited to be collaborating with you on this workshop today, Matt. And we're going to be talking about a number of experiments you can run in your firm. We're going to be workshopping with you and setting you up to take some of these lessons home to your team. And really the idea here, what we want to do with you over the next 71 minutes, is workshop with you and set you up to go back home and work with your team, whether that's you and your support staff at home, whether you're a bare naked solo, whether you're in a firm of 100 people. We want to set you up to be able to go home and take some of the learnings today where we prime the pump and set you up for running more of this at home. You were also the inaugural recipients of our print edition of the workbook, which our graphic design team has done an amazing job of putting together. And I want to make sure that everyone in this room scans this QR code and joins the legal community. And we'll be sure to post a link to this in the conference app chat as well. But if you have a chance, take a snap right now. I'll show it again at the end of the session if you need to walk up and get closer to the screen. But in this law community, we're going to be having an ongoing partnership and a relationship as a group talking about this workshop. You can join this community. We can use it as a tool to distribute new materials. We'll be publishing an online, a PDF version of this workbook. We'll also be publishing an 11 by 17 PDF version of the workbook that you'll be able to print out, and it's a much better format for doing with a larger group. So join the law community, and this room will become a community after the conference, which is really, really cool. So let me have a quick show of hands. Who has read The Client-Centered Law Firm? I want to kind of get a sense of where the room is at. Okay, so I'd say that's about half of the folks in the room have read the book. As Nefra offered, we do have paperback copies of the book for sale at the book stand if you're interested in picking it up. But what I want to try to do over the course of 10 minutes, and I don't want to spend more than that talking about it, is just prime the pump and talk to you about some of the core concepts in the client-centered law firm so that you can apply some of these ideas to the workshop session we'll be hosting following this intro. So at the heart of the book is this idea that what we're facing is the consumerization of legal services, that client expectations are shifting rapidly, and if we want to thrive as law firms in the face of this change, we need to think about how we redesign our delivery of legal services, our pricing and packaging of legal services in brand new ways. And that the legal consumer of both the future and the present has a different set of expectations than they did in the past. And the lawyers that respond to those shifting expectations will be the lawyers that win in this new marketplace. One of the common ideals about how you thrill clients and make sure that they're really net promoters of your law firm at the end of a legal engagement is to under-promise and over-deliver. This is something we hear all the time. What is really counterintuitive, and this is quantitative research done by the Consumer Experience Bureau, is that delight doesn't actually pay. It turns out there are rapidly diminishing returns once you meet a client's expectations for what you said you would do when you said you would do it, and that there's really no incremental gain to this concept of over-delivering on your promise. So if we can't thrill customers by over-delivering, by doing something faster or cheaper than they thought it might be, how can we win consumers in this new era? It turns out consumers want effortless experiences. And again, this is something we can see quantitatively through the research I was just referencing, but it's something we can also, I think, just feel viscerally if we think about the day-to-day interactions we have with different kinds of apps. Even something as basic as buying a coffee. Who has used the Starbucks mobile app? I'm just curious to see a show of hands. And who goes to Starbucks? Keep your hand up if you go to Starbucks using the mobile app, even though the coffee is not as good as another place, just because they have the mobile app, right? That's actually, I think almost everyone's still holding their hand up. Starbucks realized if they just make the effort of buying a coffee something that is more seamless, that doesn't involve you standing in a line, getting your credit card out and standing in another line, they can win more market share. So invest in this and they're winning. And when we think about other effortless customer experiences, Airbnb has taken the world of vacation rentals, which used to be full of manual processes and faxes and credit checks and all sorts of nonsense, and turned it into something as simple as booking a hotel room. We've all used Uber and take for granted the fact that we can hail a cab to any place instantly and wait just a matter of minutes to get a specifically designed transportation experience. We're now used to the idea, especially post-pandemic, that we can order almost everything we need for our day-to-day lives and have it on our doorstep the next day or sometimes even the same day. And when I talk about the consumerization of legal, consumers' experiences with all of these touch points with other companies, other service providers in their day-to-day life, when they think about needing legal services, all of those experiences have shaped what their expectations are of you now. The other reason we want to be thinking creatively about unlocking the opportunity of the latent legal market is we can access a brand new market, a massive market, if we think differently about the legal landscape and stop thinking about it as a zero-sum game as we have in the past. One of the tropes you'll hear at many legal technology conferences is this question, which is, do you want to be Netflix or do you want to be Blockbuster? And this notion that Netflix killed Blockbuster. Or do you want to be Uber or do you want to be the taxi industry? Or do you want to be Airbnb or any of the hotels that they're eating the lunch of? Or that Amazon and the Kindle killed the physical book. But there's actually a more nuanced and a more important story about how these companies have impacted the industries they've transformed. What's interesting, if we look at this, do you want to be Netflix or do you want to be a Blockbuster question, what's really interesting is that Netflix did not replace Blockbuster. If we look at the decline of Blockbuster and their eventual bankruptcy and the emergence of Netflix as the dominant streaming provider, their revenues ended up being a multiple of what peak Blockbuster revenue ever ended up being. And the key thing here is Netflix did not replace Blockbuster. Netflix created a bigger market than ever existed for Blockbuster. Blockbuster was in the business of selling physical cassettes and renting physical cassettes. Netflix, their mission statement is to entertain the world, whether that's streaming, which they're doing right now, or moving into video games and other forms of entertainment. Similar story with cabs and rideshare. Rideshare did not kill the taxi industry. What we're actually seeing is that people are taking more rides than they ever have in the past. People are decreasing car ownership because they've made it so effortless to get transported from one location to another. And more people without cars is better for both the rideshare industry and the taxi industry. Room bookings has gone up. Airbnb is not killing hotels. They're like an entire class of people that were not able to travel or afford to travel previously to new places. So we're seeing worldwide travel has gotten more popular than it's ever been thanks to what Airbnb has unlocked. Similarly, having a Kindle has this funny kind of impact that's completely counterintuitive, but it turns out people buy more physical books, more print books when they have a Kindle as well. They just start reading more and they start buying more physical books and more ebooks. So you might be asking, like, what the hell does all of this have to do with legal, Jack? And I'll connect the dots here. What this has to do with legal is we hear a lot of lawyers talking about the fact that they're worried about legal being commodified. Mark Britton gave a fantastic talk yesterday about this pyramid that exists in legal for doing more transactional, more routine legal work and helping that fuel more expensive legal work down the road. If you didn't catch that yesterday, I encourage you to watch the recorded version when it's available. But what all of this has to do with legal is the fact that the current legal market is about a $500 billion a year market. But the World Justice Project tells us that 77% of legal issues did not receive support from a lawyer. 77% of the market has its needs unaddressed right now. And this is what I describe as the latent legal market. There's a huge amount of the market that has demand, and we've seen from several of our Reisman winners last night, we've seen in companies like Hello Divorce, the opportunity to deliver legal services in a completely new way that taps into this massive market opportunity that is the latent legal market. And the way we can tap into that market is by thinking about what legal is currently doing as a problem with product market fit. And this is a concept from the startup world, but the basic idea is if you've designed a product that isn't quite hitting the nerve of your target customer, you don't have product market fit. And I'm a big fan of Venn diagrams, as you can tell. If we think about the product and the product market fit is really a test of how well are you delivering a solution to the market needs. And when we look at this, 77% of the legal issues in the United States every year going unserved by a lawyer. If legal was a startup, it would be a startup with extremely poor product market fit. It's basically a very strong signal saying you are not delivering the product that the marketplace wants. And it may be for a multitude of reasons. It may be because of pricing or packaging or accessibility, but we need a new way of approaching this problem. And that's what the client-centered law firm is all about, which is how can we work from the client and their problems outward and make sure we're designing a solution that has better product market fit. And that's what we're gonna workshop with you over the next hour. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Matt, who will be facilitating the workshop. Over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. So I want to talk a little bit about designing your client-centered firm. Lots of us think of client experience as one thing to fix. I'm here because I want to fix my client experience. I would suggest instead it's 1,000 things to improve. And so for each client you have, their experience is subtly different. Each kind of law you practice, again, the experience is subtly different. And so what we're going to give to you here in the next hour or so is a toolkit to help you think creatively and differently about your client experience, one experience at a time. So as an example, if I think about why I go to a lawyer, it's to fix a problem I have. It might be to provide for my children. It might be ultimately for me to become richer, to solve jail for myself or my family. But if I go to a lawyer and say, that's what I want, you can't, as a lawyer, fix that experience. You can't solve for that in one way. And so the example I'll use as we go through this is the thing that almost all of us are going to be doing either later today or early tomorrow. We're going to go to the airport. Why do we fly? We fly to get somewhere. How do I solve for getting somewhere is to not kill you along the way. Yet, when we think about the experience, there are 100 touch points that airports, that airlines have as they think creatively about what to solve for us. So I'll give you just one. If I think specifically about I'm in line to check a bag, that's a discrete part of the experience. That experience itself is only a small part of this journey from deciding to go, booking my ticket, ultimately arriving at the airport, parking, finding my way to the counter, and then after that, going through security, and so on and so on and so on until we finally arrive. And so an airline doesn't say, I want to fix our client experience, our passenger experience. They should be looking at every discrete piece of that experience for every discrete kind of customer and say, here's some things we might try to improve that experience. So as an example, this is work we've done way back in the day. Think about Emirates Airlines. Super fancy airline, super expensive, almost all their travels are international. They used to, in line, would say to everyone as they're waiting to check a bag, they wanted their service to be friendly. They were trying to solve for friendly. They were rewarding their people saying, hey, have a personal conversation with someone. Oh, you're going to Paris. Paris is lovely this kind of year. I think it's amazing. You should make sure you go to the Louvre, and so on and so on and so on. And in the moment, that experience feels great for that person. But how does it feel for everyone in line hearing that conversation over and over and over again? Not only that, but when you're in the line, what do you want as a passenger? The one thing you want is for that line to move faster. That's all you care about. And so the moment you've identified at that particular stage of the client experience that this is what we're trying to optimize for, you can build data. How long does it take on average now? What are some things we can try to make the line move faster? What Emirates does is they actually now say, and it's now even improved since then, is that every time you come to the counter, in order to speed you on your way, may I have your passport, please? That's what is said. The line moves faster and faster and faster. Now the moment we've moved the line faster, now the question is how much faster can we make it? What can we design in the experience as you're standing in line to make sure you have your passport ready? How can we automate the experience? I'll give another example. From the same workshop, Emirates Airlines is sitting there going, when people get off the plane, there's a small subset of passengers for whom their bags are lost. Who's had this happen to them in the last 10 years? So I don't want to bring back too many memories, but this is what happens. You get off the plane, you get to the baggage claim, and it finally comes around, and then the bags stop, and you look at the 7 other people, you wait 10 more minutes thinking it's going to start up again, you look at those same people, and then you race to the little office so you can be first in line to fill out your bag claim check. Having that conversation experience, that's an awful experience. But now you start to say, if we want to optimize for eliminating uncertainty, here's what Emirates does. They know, first of all, whether your bag is lost about 80% of the time before you even get off the plane. They found it. They scanned it. It's sitting on the tarmac. It made its way to another airport. They also generally know how to contact you. They know lots of information about you. So imagine when you get off the plane, the first thing you see is a sign that says, Mr. Newton, your bag has been lost. It'll be here in 2 hours. Please report directly to the bad claim office. You get there, the form is already filled out. You sign it, you tell them when you're staying in the hotel, say, we'll have it there in 2 hours. Right? That is one slice of the experience for one very small group of people, but when you have that experience, it changes your relationship with the airline and changes your relationship with how you think about work, how you think about flying, let's just say. What we're going to do with this workbook, and it's sitting in front of you, and I'll explain a little bit about the methodology behind it as we walk through it step by step. We'll play with a couple of the exercises here in this workshop, but the goal of this workshop is to give you the ability to think about your client experience the same way the customers that, the companies that Jack put up on the screen, that Starbucks, that Airbnb, that Uber have thought about their customer experience. And so the workbook, as you might look and see, is an 11 by 17. This is a tiny workbook. This is not a collaborative experience. This is the workbook that when you get on the plane, you open up and you fill out for yourself and your firm. But what's going to happen is that next week you'll see a link in that community to 11 by 17 worksheets that you can print out. The moment the worksheet becomes bigger, it now is a collaborative community exercise. It's an exercise you can do with your team. It's an exercise you can do with your staff, your customers, your clients, your friends, your peers. Even if you've got other friends in this community who might potentially be in the same city or town as you, gather in a bigger group and start to think through using these exercises how you make your firm better for your clients and how you make them better for your clients one type of client at a time. So there is a journey mapping exercise, and we're going to talk just briefly about it as we walk through the individual steps. But from Jack's book, you might remember that there is an entire customer journey. That journey is centered on the things your clients are experiencing. It's the things they're experiencing and how you impact those experiences. So if you look at the page, you start to see the questions your clients are asking, the things they're wondering about. Even before they hire you, what are the questions they're answering? How do you have better answers to those questions? And we're going to walk through stage by stage how you take that experience and think creatively and collaboratively about ways to fix it. So first and foremost, you can't solve for every client exactly the same way at exactly the same time. I always like to think about that ideal average client, that client who exists, who is marginally profitable at least, who you like to serve. Identify that client first. It might be even the kind of practice you love most. And start to answer some questions about that client, right? What is the client type? What part of the journey do you want to start with? It might not be the journey that is first in line. It might be the thing that's the biggest pain for them. It might be your invoices, as an example. Right? Think about how your clients don't understand some of the things you're charging for. Whatever that piece of the journey is, start to walk through and ask questions like this. Describe what your firm does at this stage of the journey for that or to that particular client. List everyone in your firm who engages with them in that step of the journey, and then put yourself in their shoes and start asking questions about what are they hearing and seeing? What are they feeling? What are they wondering? And so on and so forth. And I'll give a specific example. When I was practicing way back in the day, we realized that one of the things our clients really struggled with was where to park when they came to our office. The first part of the journey, where do they park when they come to the office? And guess what? They now come to your office frustrated, exasperated, late, somewhat angry. If not your office, think about their trip to the courthouse to meet you. What we did in that piece of the experience to improve it just a little bit is we took pictures. My favorite one was actually at the courthouse. We took pictures of where to park. We took pictures of the really nice security guards, the sheriffs at the Madison County Courthouse who are manning the metal detectors. We gave them the list of things that they need to do and what they shouldn't bring, handguns, knives being among the things that should have been obvious. We gave them maps to the courtroom. And all of a sudden, they're in that courtroom, they're meeting us there because we've been there maybe for 3 or 4 hours on other matters, and they are calm. In particular, I was in bankruptcy court in Southern District of Illinois, and a woman was sitting next to us all stressed because she hadn't even met her lawyer. And she asked my client, aren't you stressed too? And my client says, no, I know exactly what to expect. That's a client experience thing you can do simply, easily, and does that impact everyone? No. But it changes the experience for that particular client. So pick a piece of that experience and start to think about what it feels like to be there. I'll give you another example. In your waiting room, what does it feel like, assuming some of us still have waiting rooms and see clients face-to-face, what does it feel like to be there? What does it feel like to sit in your office? What does it feel like to overhear your staff talking about other people's matters? What does it feel like to see inside your room where you actually work a pile of books and papers? Again, I'm dating myself with that example. Sitting in your waiting room for an hour. Have a friend do the same thing. All of a sudden you have a chance to start putting yourself in that client's shoes for that particular slice of the experience. And again, when we talk about experience, especially using this workbook, this is not something you do overnight. Right? You are thinking about your experience constantly, and with your clients and for your clients, you might say this year, this quarter, this month, we're going to focus on one slice, make it better, measure it, potentially make it better again, and then move on to another. You're not fixing everything for everyone all at once. So we branded this as we thought through how to explain this with Jack's book came out. This is a client experience audit. Those of you who do tax law, you know that word really freaks people out. But as we think about this audit, there are a handful of things in this book, and I'm going to walk you through each exercise, and then we're going to play with some of them here in a moment. There are 7 steps in designing any piece of your client's experience. So the first, and we'll go through these one by one. The first is to capture the expectations. What do your clients expect when they get there? What are the words they use to describe you? Not to you, but to their peers, to their friends, to their family members, to their colleagues, the folks at work. How do they use those words? Getting into their head, being empathetic about the ways that they say things about you is a good signal on where you go. The next step, annoyance mapping. Now, this is a term that I use, and I don't know how much science there is behind it, but if you ask my wife what she hates about me, there are 3 things. I think I know 2 of them, and I at least know for the last 10 years and change they are not deal breakers. Someone's laughing like you know differently. I'm not sure. If, however, you ask my wife what annoys her about me, is there wine involved and how much time do we have? The word annoy is a magical word. It isn't getting to hate. It isn't something that makes me want to leave. It isn't a matter of breaking up with your firm, finding someone else. But you ask your clients what annoys them about your bill, what annoys them about your parking, what annoys them about the way they set an appointment. Those words are magic. And so the annoyance mapping exercise is just a chance to think a little bit differently about the places that might be easiest for you to start in fixing things. The next step, question building. I'm someone who thinks you can build an entire strategy around a handful of questions you want to have better answers to tomorrow than you have today. Almost all of us who've done strategic planning end up with a binder of to-dos. That binder of to-dos often sits on a shelf with a date. As it gets closer, we feel more and more guilty that we've not touched it. In 2021, we haven't touched it. In 2022, we've kind of touched it. In 2023, time to do another strategic plan. Instead, imagine what questions you can have better answers to tomorrow than today. It doesn't mean you have to answer them completely. It just means your answers have to be better. And so that's where question building comes in. And you might have 3 or 4 or 10 or 100 questions you might prioritize. But as you think about the questions, frame them as how might we? Does anyone here know the opposite of the word can? Oh, come on. Can't. It wasn't a trick question, I promise. The moment that you frame a word with how can we, someone else in your firm will almost immediately say, but we can't because. What is the opposite of the word might? Can't. Mightn't sounds really pretentious. But if you say, how might we do something, it doesn't build that reflexive automatic, but we mightn't do it this way. And so framing even these questions, how might we, it allows for expansive thought, it allows for experimentation, which I'll talk about in a moment. But how might we do some things? Build those questions. And I can promise you, for those of you who have staff, team members, never use the term, promise me you'll never use the term non-lawyer after leaving this room, by the way. If you have team members, Ask them, what question should I answer better tomorrow than I can today? You move from that question building to a very simple exercise. What should we start doing? What should we stop doing? We also like a framing features and bugs. What are features of our current world that we want to keep in our practice, and what are bugs that we want to fix? The cool thing about thinking about bugs, again, it fits in the start-stop model very well, is bugs are not things that are necessarily, that don't include blame. We've all used Microsoft or Apple. We've all just recently got pushed to our iPhones a critical security update. Apple did not say Steve was the guy who screwed this up 7 years ago. So when we start doing something, the things we should stop doing, that now leads you down one more path. Impact, ease, prioritization. Where should you spend your time and effort? What are the easiest things we can fix fastest? And from there, and this is where we'll spend our time today, what are some experiments we can try? So I'm going to talk about this a little bit more because this is crucially important. In the work we do, we found that there's magic words in the idea of experiments. I don't know that I can say this out loud, but I don't work for Clio specifically, so I'm going to talk about experiments are very much like if you've read Anne Lamott's book, Bird by Bird. It's a magical book about the power of writing, and she frames these things as shitty first drafts. Crappy first drafts, if you want to edit that first part out. A first draft's only purpose is to exist. Similarly, an experiment's only purpose is to teach you something that you can then try again, learn from, iterate, etc. So we're going to talk a lot about experiments. The coolest thing about experiments is that they're designed to be small. You've been in the startup world. I know Jack thinks about experiments all the time. We pulled some drawings and some stuff that we'd done 12 years ago with Jack's team, and it had a bunch of experiments listed on a Post-it note, most of which you've done 10 or 15 iterations of. But when you think about experiments, experiments are bigger than an idea, but not by much. An experiment is smaller than a pilot. A pilot is smaller than a project. A project is smaller than an initiative. So as you start to frame experiments, you could almost be, what can we get done by next Tuesday? Simple little things you can try. And the reason why we think in experiments is because it's approachable. You could build a client experimentation team and bring them in and say, what experiment should we try? There's lots of ways to use the language, and we'll show you the form for it here in a second. But experiments are the crucial piece of improving your client's experience because you don't have to get it right all at once. Do we have anybody here who is someone who is a perfectionist who hates to release anything unless it's perfect? No, I didn't think so. Experiments are your path away from perfection. They allow you to try new things in a safe way for a short period of time for a small amount of money and then move forward. And finally, the post-mortem review. After every experiment, after everything you've done, it is crucial for you to look back and what did we learn? What did we try? What did we learn? What went right? What went wrong? And unless you use that post-mortem review, you're never going to understand how to make things better. I'm going to give you the challenge with post-mortems. And again, this is a high level, but we don't do post-mortems when we should. When things go well, it's really fun to gather a group of people around and say, oh, what went right? This is so amazing. Let's pat ourselves on the back. When things go wrong, especially when someone or a group of people screwed something up, when something didn't work the way you wanted it to, or when it's you who made the mistake, the post-mortem often goes out the window because it's uncomfortable to have a conversation about something we've just failed at. And so instead, we assume, they know that they screwed up, let's move on. And then you find them make the same mistake, or you make the same mistake 6 months later. So let's walk through these one at a time. So expectation capture. Think about 4 different client groups. And I don't know how many of these, if these are words that you like or not, but in your head, there are clients you've loved. There are clients you've hated. Or disliked, if you want to be a little bit kinder. There are easy clients and hard clients. Right now, if you were to write these down, and you can capture a couple of these, just capture the one that springs top of mind for you if you like. But the moment you start thinking about clients you've disliked and challenging clients, they're not always the same. Part of the cool thing about being a lawyer is doing good work with challenging clients. But it's not necessarily doing really good work for clients you hate. So as you identify the types of clients here, the ones that fit in each bucket, everything else we start to go through, you might pick one. It isn't about trying to solve for all four at a time, but you might find that the clients I hate because of something that you can fix. And maybe that's where you start to play out what that experience is. So when you find those clients you've loved, clients you've disliked, clients that are easy, clients that are hard, think about things that have delighted them and annoyed them. Right, again, capturing the plus and the minus there on that sheet. We don't have to do this right now, but this is something that as you get on the airplane home, after you've checked your bag and been annoyed by them having conversations with everybody in front of you, start to think about how you'll take this and explore this. Once you get past that, the annoyance mapping, this is my favorite part. List the 7 things that might annoy your clients. Again, picking that one kind of client in that one kind of practice who's trying to do that one sort of thing for you versus everybody. And if you can't think of these things, ask the person who answers your phone. Ask the person who engages with them. Ask your spouse, your partner, your best friend. They know what annoys your clients, even if you're unwilling to admit it out loud because you complain about it, or they're the ones who struggle. If you still can't figure out what annoys your clients, go to your closed file room. And again, I know that's a metaphor now because you're all in Clio, it's all digital. And find the ones where the clients didn't pay you, who fired you for whatever reason. Call them up and ask them, what annoyed you about our work? And you're going to be shocked. And oftentimes it's the littlest things that strike you as, oh my goodness, I didn't even know that, and it's something I can fix. Once you understand what those annoying things are, start to categorize them. Are they people, communications, processes, tools and tech, or other? Again, as you're starting to identify what those are, most of the times if I think annoyance, they might be a couple boxes. But start to think where they fit, and it will help you move through this process. Question building. Going to people, how might we? Our clients wish we do this better because once we do, their experience will improve in these ways. Same with communication, same with tools and tech, same with processes. Communication, how might we ensure that we return telephone calls within 24 hours? Your clients are annoyed, as almost every legal client is in some way, that you don't call them back in time. Right, Jack, I remember a legal trends report from a couple years ago where the statistic was off the charts on how terrible lawyers were generally at doing that. Right? Our clients wish we do this better because they're freaking out. They have someone they need to talk about. They have kids that are supposed to visit. They think they're about to die. They're going to the hospital. Whatever the kind of law you practice, the moment you answer that, and then once we do, what is their experience? How does it improve and in what ways? This sheet you can do 100 times. Each kind of client, each part of the experience. Once you've identified a handful of those things, you're going to start to identify trends. Very soon you're going to start to see that there are a handful of things that rear their ugly head again and again and again. I'll give an example, and I will not throw a particular lawyer under the bus, but when we would do a law firm retreat, we had about 40, 50 lawyers in the room, and a lot of our work is done in small groups. So we set it up for the room, and then our people are working in small groups, and I'm hummingbirding my way around from table to table. And in this room, all of the problems they were talking about, the features and bugs, the things to stop and start, the things that annoyed, they kept on coming back to 2 names, right? Because they would check people. Like, what do you mean people? It's like, oh, it's Agnes and Dolores. These people had been at the front desk of this office, senior paralegal, senior admin, for years. They had been connected to this firm forever. And as I talk with each of these groups, they're like, oh, we do this, but Agnes won't allow us to do this. Or Dolores, just as easily Ben and Steve, right? The names don't matter. But in this particular situation, nearly everything was coming around to these 2 people, who weren't in the room, by the way. But everyone thought that their individual experience was unique. So at this table, they're talking about Agnes. And over here, they're talking about Agnes, but they don't realize that they're also similarly having these experiences about the annoyances, things that are harder than they have to be, and so on and so forth. And so I come back into the room, and we take these little half-page cards, and I ask the room, If you could replace Agnes and Dolores with people of ordinary competence and temperament, how much better would the firm be? And of course, after answering 7 questions from lawyers, what do you mean better? I had them write a percentage down. I'm thinking the number is 7%, 5%, something like that. I started reading the cards: 40%, 60%, 30%, 20%, 90%, 200%, and so on and so on and so on. And it was shocking. And it was shocking both to me and to the managing partner when they had been tolerating something that was annoying to people in their office. It made things harder than it had to be, made processes more complicated, made it harder to buy things, made it harder to adopt technology. And so the moment that came out, what started to happen is and then we brainstormed, like it wasn't let's fire them right away. It was how do we think about improving their performance? How do we coach them? How do we help them realize the impact their decisions they're having are making on others? And the truth is, so much of the problem that people have with change isn't they don't like change, they just hate being bad at something they used to be good at. And so Agnes and Dolores were both sitting there going, I like this process because I'm the expert. I figured it out. I'm the linchpin. I'm the one that everyone has to come to. I have power in some ways, but I also am extremely competent, even though it makes it harder for everyone else in the firm to do their work. They'd never seen the other piece of it. And so if you think about a problem like that, if it's people, now you move to the start-stop. Now there's a typo on this form. It'll eventually say if we start doing ... and if we stop doing ... But start to play this out. Again, this is where your insights and your team's insights will be completely different. If you're the owner of your business, if you're the partner in charge of fill in the blank, your insights will be dramatically different than those of your staff. When you're doing these kinds of exercises, especially in a larger group, the inclination I almost always get is, well, I really don't want to participate. I should just walk around the room, right? Even if there's 3 tables of 3 people apiece. If you walk around the room when these exercises are, you've ruined every conversation in that room. If you participate in one of the groups, you've only ruined the conversations in that group. And so make certain that the people who are having these conversations about what to start, what to stop, about the annoyances, etc., that they have the freedom to engage. Also, a quick question. Do we have any introverts in this room? Introverts. Any introverts in this room? Actually, introverts don't really raise their hand, so I'm assuming there's a lot more in here. When you're engaging in work like this with a team, give this to the team days in advance. Extroverts, and I fit into that category, love to think out loud. We win every brainstorm for that reason. Not because our ideas are better, but because we say them faster and we vet them less. And so as you're thinking about doing this kind of work, whether it's doing it yourself or in particular doing it with your team, set up the challenges ahead of time. Give them a copy of this booklet. Let them all fill it out from their perspective. Then when they come to your collaborative conversations, the insights you're going to get are way, 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 way better. On top of that, give them time to have the insight and share it. Again, this is a bit of a facilitation hack, but we've all been in that group where someone shares an idea, and then someone else immediately comes over the top of that idea and says, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. Those of us who do that are, and oftentimes it's men doing it to women, but those of us who do that are often exuberant, excited. I want to build upon that. But what it does is it marginalizes that person's participation in that group because they've just been trumped. So instead, share the ideas, take turns, listen deeply. If you're ever in a conversation with 4 or 5 or 6 people in a group and it feels like everyone is talking the exact same right amount, that's a signal that you're talking too much. And so when you're thinking about having these conversations with your firm, with your group, with your clients, with your colleagues, be mindful of who's participating in what way. And the more you give work out ahead of time, you will all of a sudden have that quietest person in your office become recognized as the wisest person as well. Because otherwise they're not sharing because they're thinking differently and are being much more thoughtful than doing it, ooh, let's do this. Let's put some Post-it notes on the wall. All right, so you've come up with that. Now you start to think about impact and ease prioritization. Capture your top 10 ideas, again, as you think about the start and the stop. This can all be done with Post-it notes. It can be done on a big whiteboard. It can be done with these tools. But what are the things that have highest impact and are easiest to do? Jack loves Venn diagrams. I'm no different. I learned last year that when you've got lots of circles, they're actually called a Euler diagram, which I didn't know. But I love the 4 squares. Think about the things that are easiest, and if you struggle with what's easiest, take a vote. Give everyone a handful of points, and say, I want you to put red dots on as many red dots as you want on the things that seem really hard. I want you to put as many green dots on the ones that seem easy. And then do the same with 2 other color stickers on the impact it can have on our clients, not our firm. And you'll very quickly see what lives in that upper right-hand quadrant. And that's where you start to pay attention. And then finally, and I'm going to talk about the things I just said because this is so important. I want you to then start to design experiments. Remember, experiments are just a little bit bigger than an idea. Smaller than a pilot smaller than a project, and so on and so forth. And in those experiments, you will do one of these sheets for every single one of those experiments. And even though it's the bottom, number 9, the key is to give that experiment a super cool name. The cooler the name of the experiment, the more likely it will be to be followed, to be done. So in the experiment, during the stage of our client's journey, intake. Our customer's experience is not as good as it could be because, ... Take as much time to fill these out as you need to. But we think we can improve it in these ways, so the experiment we're going to try is. The experiment isn't about fixing the entire intake experience. It might be changing the form. It might be sending the email out a week ahead with a reminder versus the day of. It might be giving them a link to the portal with a video of you walking them through how they should use it. It could be any one of a number of things. The team for this experiment is, and again, as a solo, I realize your name might be in every box. Who's leading it? Who's tracking and measuring it? What's the measure, right? Who's helping them do it and who's paying for it? Ideally, the experiment should be relatively inexpensive, but setting that out, who's paying for it and how much they're willing to fund it by, will have a will lead to a dramatically higher likelihood that the experiment is done. Because people stop editing themselves. Oh, I have $100 or I have $1,000. The experiments are different depending upon what number that is. Finally, the first super small thing we'll start with is the lesson we hope to learn. And our clients will notice if it was a success. These questions, again, every time you find something that lives in the upper right-hand quadrant, you start to play around with, oh, here's an experiment we can try. What we do at Filament is we have going on at 3 experiments at a time and no more than that. You'll find all these experiments like, oh, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And then you get overwhelmed when you realize your name is on a line or 2 in every single one of those experiments. So pick one, track it, share it, leave these forms out. We meet every 2 weeks as a team, and we have a time dedicated in our meetings to experiments we should try. We prioritize those experiments, and ultimately they end up in the queue for us, and we get them done. But you name it, and now all of a sudden you have updates. Oh, Project XYZ. How's that experiment going, Steve? Oh, well, here it is. If your firm is bigger, you can start playing around and building experiment teams. One of my favorite models is using an idea based on the 12-week year. It's a book that should have stayed an article, but fundamentally you think about doing strategic planning. It is. We've all read some of those books. But you think about every 12 weeks, effectively every quarter, a theme for that year, that 12-week year. That theme might be customer experience. It might be something as discrete as intake, as we've been talking about. You name in your firm a CEO and a COO of that 12-week year, and it should not be you if you hold any of those other titles. That team's job then is to build experiments, try them, measure them. By the end of those 12 weeks, you now say, this lives in our process permanently, and then you move on to the next 12 weeks. One of our clients does their last 12-week year every year. The theme is celebration. They celebrate their team members, they celebrate their customers. And they have a CEO and a COO who, well, now they're in this 12 weeks, but in January knew that they were going to be leading and operationalizing that process the last 12 weeks of the year to celebrate. And so thinking about experiments, it starts to tie into nearly everything else you do in the customer experience. And because it's small and because it's easy to explain, you now start to say to customers, hey, in your newsletter, in your email, these are the 3 experiments we're running to improve your experience. Will you give us some feedback on them? You bring them in and say, hey, what experiments can we try? You gather your best customers in the room, explain this methodology, and potentially if they're a business, you say, hey, what experiments do you want to try in your business? Let's run them together and see what we learn from one another. Again, it's a framing that the moment you start talking in experiments, you get past the scariness of changing entire policies, of rolling things out for the entire firm. Because even though lawyers are stuck, rightly so in some ways, in this world of everything we do must be based on something that came before, that's really only true about the law. It's not true about how you think about your pricing. It's not true about how you think about serving your clients better. And then the post-mortem review. It's obvious, I think so, but we don't do it enough. What problem are we trying to solve? How did it improve the client experience? And so on and so on and so on. Here's a secret hack that we did not put in this workbook because it's hard to explain in text, but it's easy to describe. This post-mortem review works even better if you've done the exact same review as a pre-mortem. Before the experiment, you say, let's just pretend this went terrible. It was awful, failed completely. And pretending that it's failed, answer these same questions. What did we think was going to go wrong? All of those, and now you build your pre-mortem, and at the end of the experiment, instead of having to point blame like, oh man, again, that's Steve, he really screwed it up again. I hope there's not many Steves in this room, by the way. You can instead say, how right were we in our pre-mortem? So you literally pull out the pre-mortem, you compare it to the post-mortem, and you have a chance to understand what you missed, what you should have been paying attention to, and so on and so forth. And so in your office, again, I know many of you are virtual, imagine the wall of experiments. The ones we're doing, the ones that are coming next, and so on and so forth, taping up the pieces of paper that have the pre-mortem and ultimately the post-mortem, making this a public exercise and potentially even having it in a room where clients can see. And now they have a chance to walk through and pay attention and notice that you're trying to do things to improve their experience. Because right now, so many of the things you do under the hood are invisible to them. They might notice them, they might like you better, but if they can give feedback early on, it's even more effective. So I'm going to close with this, and then we're going to dig into some of this work. So we'll have the lights come up in just a second. But experiments are hard to think through unless you've had a chance to play with it. So the thing I'm most proud about in this workbook is we built 30 experiments. They're not in this workbook. They'll be in the community. They will be available with that QR code. But I'll share 3 of them with you. Again, there are 30 of these. They're prioritized on impact, difficulty, and cost. One of my favorite. Well, these are actually 3 of my favorite. An experiment is take your entire team to a place where your best clients shop. What do they like? Notice it. Whether it's Starbucks, whether it's a Ritz-Carlton, they would prefer that. Whether it is a favorite restaurant. Take them to that place. See what the online experience feels like to them. And then think about in that room the things that you've noticed from that particular client, that particular check-in experience at the airline, whatever it is. Now start to think about the lessons you've noticed and then you can apply to your firm. Super simple experiment. Cost is almost 0. Impact is really high. The difficulty is only getting everyone together in the same place at the same time and being thoughtful and debriefing that experience. But in your town, one of these places is probably down the street from you. So it's an easy, simple experiment. But again, it starts to inform the things you can try to build in as you build other experiments to improve things. Another one, pay to improve things for your clients. If you gave everybody in your firm $500 to $1,000 a year in a client experience improvement budget, how would they spend it? They will spend it on things that are different than you would spend it on. And you might even ask your clients to contribute and say, hey, I'm going to give you, again, ethics people in here, this might be completely impermissible, but I'm going to give you $500 as a client to spend on improving our experience for you. Well, how would you spend it? You're going to get amazing ideas that are oftentimes incredibly simple and yet start to solve for some of those things that are harder than it has to be for them, that are annoying for them, etc. And the last one quickly, this gets to the example I used before. Think about what is confusing to your clients and deconfuse them. Your clients, whether they're looking at an email from you, whether they're looking at a document you've sent, whether they're thinking about a form they're asking you to fill out, there is friction in there that you don't see because you've seen it 1,000 times. So what is confusing to them? What's harder than it has to be? And here's a really good way to do it. Give whatever communication you give to your clients to a 6 or a 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 4th grader, somewhere in that thing. Your clients aren't as dumb as a fourth grader, but they have the same attention to pay to your documents in continuous partial attention as a 4th grader might pay in full attention. Unless you have the rare single client on this planet who, when they get a communication from you, goes into a dark room, flips on a light, turns on some soft jazz, tells everyone to leave them alone for the next 30 minutes, and deeply reads everything that you've sent. They're doing it just like we are. Email buzzing, kids screaming, dogs barking, coworkers yelling. And so think about the stuff that you do through the frame of not how it is in a perfect world, but how it is ultimately received by your customers. So, before we jump in, we've got some time. Not a lot, but I want to do 2 things. The first is I want you to take 30 seconds to think about something that you do that annoys your clients. Something that annoys your clients, something that's harder than it has to be for them. Now, find someone in this room who's not in your firm, share annoyances, and in about a minute or 2, think of an experiment that you might be able to try to solve it. You don't have to use a form, but get up on your market set, talk about what's annoying your clients, and think about some experiments you want to try. Your market set, go. Get up. Do some work. All right, let's see if this works. There's another facilitation hack for you with a microphone. Let me, as I walk around the room, a handful of themes kept on emerging. One of those was my clients are annoyed because I don't call them right back. Heard it here, heard it back there. How might you solve for it differently? Right? They don't want you to call them right back as much as they want to know that you'll call them. I was on an airplane the other day. This has happened to all of us. You're sitting in the airplane and you're on the tarmac for 30 minutes. Think about the experience of on the tarmac for 30 minutes and no one tells you what's going on. The amount of anxiety just rises. You can feel the airplane getting warmer as people start vibrating with frustration and fear. Contrast that to this slight experiment that airlines seem to have tried, and some do on a regular basis. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for the delay. There's a slight thunderstorm that just popped up in Chicago. Weather Service says it'll be gone in a couple minutes. We're 7 for takeoff. We'll be leaving here in 30 minutes, and none of you will miss your connection. Think about how different that feels from an experience standpoint, even though the result is ultimately the same. Another group I heard talking about the idea that clients always expect you to do things faster than you can do them. Here's why. You're measuring your time with a stopwatch, and your clients are measuring time with a calendar. How often have we said to a client, I've got a contract, it's only take me a couple hours to review? Right? Which is true. Point 1, point 4, point 1, point 3, point 2, point 7, over the course of 6 weeks. And your client wants to come back that afternoon. It's just a couple hours. All right, I'll come back this afternoon and we'll have that conversation. As you start to put yourself in the shoes of your clients through all of these things, you're going to start to find that the language that is okay for us to use with our peers who understand the business we're in is completely foreign to our customers. I'll give one last, favorite experiment. This is actually the result of about 7 experiments we did with a customer. They were talking, it was family law, and they wanted to move away from billing by the hour. And so the first experiment was, what is a menu price? How can we menu price our work? And that menu price is X number of dollars for a deposition, X number of dollars for all the things a family law lawyer does in a traditional case. And they rolled out that experiment, and clients loved it and hated it at the same time. They loved it because they could see what it was, but the clients had never ordered from a restaurant before. Think about how oftentimes, you might be lucky and have repeating divorce clients, right? It's nice when they get divorced multiple times. But they have never gone through a divorce. So seeing a menu pricing is like going to a restaurant for the first time, having never been to a restaurant and not even understanding, do I order an appetizer or not? What is this main course? What is these side? How does it work? And so the next experiment, 3 or 4 later, was we built 3 sample meals. Meal number 1, we all get along. It included the initial consultation. It included the settlement agreement. It included a mediation. It included those 5, and it was $2,000 or $3,000, whatever that number was. The third meal, and there was one kind of the average meal. The third meal was my spouse's batshit crazy meal. Guess what that included? Again, still the menu prices. It included everything on the menu. It's like when an NBA player wins a title and goes out to a restaurant and a club, right? The $40,000 meal. And what they realized was it wasn't the fact that the menu pricing was complicated. It was that the clients didn't understand. They were confused by what they'd have to order or what a case would require. And so in that situation, where are you in the spectrum? Well, guess what? If you think your spouse is here, or the opposing counsel's a jerk, right? Another kind of part of that meal, we're going to ask for a much bigger retainer because this is how it can add up. And so there's so many ways as you start to think about this experience through your client's eyes that you can change for them the way they perceive your firm, the way they talk to others, and on top of that, increase your satisfaction with the practice of law because you're dealing with people who are less annoyed at you and who are excited because they understand what's going to happen, they enjoy the experience, and they feel dramatically more heard, engaged, and ultimately represented. So I have 8 seconds left. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Scan the QR code, read the book, download the workbook, print out the bigger sheets, and in the community you're going to find 30 really freaking cool experiments that you can try. Just promise not to try them all at once. Appreciate you all. Thank you so much. And Jack, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Let's have for Matt, just to wrap up, like Matt said, we're out of time, but I do want this group to continue the learnings and continue the journey on becoming a client-centered law firm together. So please do sign up for the community. We'll be publishing the 11x17 PDFs by the end of next week to this law firm community. So please sign up before then. You'll get a notification when you join the group of when we publish those materials. And thank you so much for attending today. I hope this was great. We had an amazing time and enjoy the rest of day 2. Thanks, everyone.